This installation was done at the Seattle International Airport. It was done with a microtopping over an existing concrete suspended slab. You can see that there is some additional coloration added to the surface to give us some natural highlighting and modeling. It was done over the course of 3 nights with 2 people. This is the condition of the concrete slab before we started. You can see that it's in pretty good condition aside from a few cracks in the surface. What we needed to do was to clean the surface properly to make sure we had proper adhesion of the microtopping to the surface. Here you can see the cracks are being filled in with a polymer modified patching material, feather patch. This will keep the microtopping from seeping into the cracks and leaving sinkholes in the finish. A floor maintainer was used to then scrub and wash the floor with a TSP and water solution. This will remove any type of grease spots or any areas that could become bond breakers to the microtopping. A thorough cleaning is advisable. If the concrete was too smooth, the floor may have required an acid washing to etch it and to roughen it up. The airport has difficult standards to work under, and you can't make too much noise, have too much dust, or have too much smell in the air. So everything that we did was designed to be used in an airport setting. Once the floor was cleaned, the first coat of microtopping was installed. The surface has water misted onto it in order to get a better bond of the material into the concrete, as well as it doesn't draw the moisture out of the topping material. We mixed it in 2 bag mixes, which should cover around 450 up to around 700 square feet per mixture. A stiff bristled broom is used to push the material around and force it into the surface to make sure that we get a good adhesion or good bond. After the material is brushed out, then we go over it with a squeegee. This one's called a magic trowel, and this will remove the broom marks and leave us with a nicer finish. The trick is to keep a wet edge, which means to continually add on new material to the edge before it dries. This will make sure it looks like one continuous floor installation. Here you can see the first coat being installed again. Spill it out, brush it with a stiff bristled broom, and then smooth it out with a squeegee or magic trowel. At the end of the pour, we used a garbage bag to collect the remaining material. It's an easier way to collect it. Of course, here you can see we've got a little bit excessive put onto the floor. Now the trick is to gather it up and not spill it so you can get it into the garbage. This is what the floor looks the day after the first coat is dry. Now we go around and scrape off any high spots or chunks that might have been in the mix. Here you can see we had a spot that had a chunk in it, so we scraped off the chunk, and now we're doing a little bit of touch-up repair before we do the second coat of material. We weren't quite sure what these spots were, but they ended up having about 5 or 6 of them throughout the floor. These things tend to happen with decorative concrete, so you just have to find a solution to make them disappear. In this case, it was fairly simple, scraping and touching up with a small batch of mixed material. We used an integral liquid coloration system that was mixed into the polymer of the topping system. You can see here it's measured out in a cup and each batch gets 1 cup of coloration per 5 gallons of polymer. If you take care of this before you start mixing, it gives you more time to empty the bags and clean up the work area and not fumbling around with color. Here you can see exactly how the mixing of the concrete was done. First you add the 5 gallons of the liquid polymer with the integral color already added. In this case, the 5-gallon bucket was divided into 2.5-gallon buckets to make it easier to lift it into the pail. The first of 2 bags of microtopping is added to the bucket and then drilled thoroughly. After a good minute or 2 of drilling, the second bag is then added. And once again, thoroughly drilled and blended so there are no chunks and the color is dispersed throughout the batch. After blending, the material is brought to the job site on a roller. And again, for the second coat, you can see that we like to wet or dampen the surface prior to installing the top coat. Sometimes the cement draws the moisture out of the topping material and makes it chunky and makes it very difficult to work with. Don't put too much water, but enough to have the surface at a point where it's darkened and you can see that it is somewhat moist. Here again you can see the material being spilled out in a long run to maintain a wet edge, keeping the edge of the concrete wet. A thin band is all you need, and that way you can stay in control even though it's a long pour all the way across the space. In this case, we don't use the broom anymore. We go right ahead with a squeegee or magic trowel to put the final finish onto the floor topping. Work a back and forth squeegee motion, moving the material along the dampened floor. This will be the finish, so make sure that you have a nice looking end result on it. Here's what the floor looked like after the second coat was dry. There was still a little bit of ghosting of where the cracks were. Perhaps they might have needed a little bit of additional acrylic or primer applied to them. Here we used a very easy product to use, which is a water-based acrylic coloration system. It's mixed with water and color, and it's misted onto the surface. And this will help to give the finish more of a natural appearance, more of a concrete-looking appearance. You can pretty much use any combination or colors that you want. In this case, we used a terracotta type color, and it was installed with a backpack sprayer, as you can see here. This is just more of the same technique for applying the coloration. A light mist and keeping it a natural modeled finish as it's being installed. Sometimes a couple coats are necessary to get the right finish. This is the first coat of sealer that we're putting on the floor after the coloration is dry. Generally, it can be done fairly quickly after the coloration is dry because they're all water-based products and they're compatible. We used a 2-component polyurethane. It's actually called Polyurethane 700, available from Arizona Polymer Flooring. And in this case, we used a airless sprayer to mist on a first coat. If you mist on a first coat, it helps to lock in the color, as well as it guarantees that you're not going to have any roller lines from trying to roll on a coat of sealer. It's also a lot easier and a lot quicker to do it this way. For the final coat, we spray and back roll a top coat on. Some of the footage is missing because we don't have it showing being sprayed on, but basically the material has sprayed on, and then you come back and you roll it out, which gives you a nice consistent finish. So at the end of the day, this job was done with 2 people over the course of 3 nights. It was over 8,000 square feet of flooring, 2 coats of microtopping, and sealed with 2 coats of water-based polyurethane with a little bit of water-based color in between. It was a great job, very little fumes, very little smell, very little dust, and we did it in very strict accordance to the regulations at the airport, and they were very happy with the results. We then passed on a maintenance schedule and the janitorial crew from the airport then proceeds with waxing it after about a week of it curing to make sure it's maintained, and as well will add a little bit of a gloss to the finish. Pretty much a successful job. If you're looking for more ideas, how-to videos, and information on decorative concrete, visit concreteideas.com, the site for decorative concrete. Hope you found this video tutorial helpful.